คุณภูเขาทะเลที่พาให้เราได้มาพบกันจนเราผูกพันกันมาแสนนานกี่พันปัญหาใดๆที่เราร่วมกันก้าวผ่านจนวันนี้ล้อมรวมเป็นหนึ่งเดียวพวกเราร่วมกันเป็นผู้เดินนำการท่องเที่ยวจนก้าวไกลมือทั้งสองคอยโอบประคองให้บ้านชื่อไทยสุขใจหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็มีความหมายทำให้พวกเรายังก้าวไปด้วยหัวใจสื่อตรงที่จะทำดีหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็ดูยิ่งใหญ่เตือนให้พวกเราได้เข้าใจว่าเพื่อใครที่ฉันต้องดูแลบ้านของเราให้ดีพวกเราร่วมกันเป็นผู้เดินนำการท่องเที่ยวจนก้าวไกลมือทั้งสองคอยโอบประคองให้บ้านชื่อไทยสุขใจหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็มีความหมายทำให้พวกเรายังก้าวไปด้วยหัวใจสื่อตรงที่จะทำดีหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็ดูยิ่งใหญ่เตือนให้พวกเราได้เข้าใจว่าเพื่อใครที่ฉันต้องดูแลบ้านของเราให้ดีเป็นผู้เดินนำการท่องเที่ยวจนก้าวไกลมือทั้งสองคอยโอบประคองให้บ้านชื่อไทยสุขใจหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็มีความหมายทำให้พวกเรายังก้าวไปด้วยหัวใจสื่อตรงที่จะทำดีหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็ดูยิ่งใหญ่เตือนให้พวกเราได้เข้าใจว่าเพื่อใครที่ฉันต้องดูแลบ้านของเราให้ดีจะทุ่มเทตลอดไปเพราะเมืองไทยคือหัวใจของเราขอบคุณภูเขาทะเลที่พาให้เราได้มาพบกันจนเราผูกพันกันมาแสนนานกี่พันปัญหาใดๆที่เราร่วมกันก้าวผ่านจนวันนี้ล้อมรวมเป็นหนึ่งเดียวพวกเราร่วมกันเป็นผู้เดินนำการท่องเที่ยวจนก้าวไกลมือทั้งสองคอยโอบประคองให้บ้านชื่อไทยสุขใจหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็มีความหมายทำให้พวกเรายังก้าวไปด้วยหัวใจสื่อตรงที่จะทำดีหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็ดูยิ่งใหญ่เตือนให้พวกเราได้เข้าใจว่าเพื่อใ ที่ฉันต้องดูแลบ้านของเราให้ดีพวกเราร่วมกันเป็นผู้เดินนำการท่องเที่ยวจนก้าวไกลมือทั้งสองคอยโอบประคองให้บ้านชื่อไทยสุขใจหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็มีความหมายทำให้พวกเรายังก้าวไปด้วยหัวใจซื่อตรงที่จะทำดีหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็ดูยิ่งใหญ่เตือนให้พวกเราได้เข้าใจว่าเพื่อใครที่ฉันต้องดูแลบ้านของเราให้ดีเป็นผู้เดินนำการท่องเที่ยวจนก้าวไกลมือทั้งสองคอยโอบประคองให้บ้านชื่อไทยสุขใจหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็มีความหมายทำให้พวกเรายังก้าวไปด้วยหัวใจซื่อตรงที่จะทำดีหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็ดูยิ่งใหญ่เตือนให้พวกเราได้เข้าใจว่าเพื่อใครที่ฉันต้องดูแลบ้านของเราให้ดีจะทุ่มเทตลอดไปเพราะเมืองไทยคือหัวใจของเราขอบคุณภูเขาทะเลที่พาให้เราได้มาพบกันจนเราผูกพันกันมาแสนนานที่พันปัญหาใดๆที่เราร่วมกันก้าวผ่านจนวันนี้ล้อมรวมเป็นหนึ่งเดียวพวกเราร่วมกันเป็นผู้เดินนำการท่องเที่ยวจนก้าวไกลมือทั้งสองคอยโอบประคองให้บ้านชื่อไทยสุขใจหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็มีความหมายทำให้พวกเรายังก้าวไปด้วยหัวใจซื่อตรงที่จะทำดีหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็ดูยิ่งใหญ่เตือนให้พวกเราได้เข้าใจว่าเพื่อใครที่ฉันต้องดูแลบ้านของเราให้ดีพวกเราร่วมกันเป็นผู้เดินนำการท่องเที่ยวจนก้าวไกลมือทั้งสองคอยโอบประคองให้บ้านชื่อไทยสุขใจหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็มีความหมายทำให้พวกเรายังก้าวไปด้วยหัวใจซื่อตรงที่จะทำดีหนึ่งรอยยิ้มของใครก็ดูยิ่งใหญ่เตือนให้พวกเราได้เข้าใจว่าเพื่อใครที่ฉันต้องดูแลบ้านของเราให้ดี I see new horizons are opening up
into the new shades. Amazing Thailand.
สวัสดีค่ะท่านผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านนะคะขอต้อนรับเข้าสู่ช่วงของเวบินาร์โดยการท่องเที่ยวแห่งประเทศไทยในบ่ายวันนี้นะคะซึ่งจะเป็นหัวข้อที่เกี่ยวข้องกับตลาดสหรัฐเป็นการเฉพาะแต่เดี๋ยวดิฉันขออนุญาตถอนมาสก์นิดนึงนะคะเพื่อความสะดวกในการพูดคุยนะคะรอยยิ้มเล็กๆอย่างนี้แม้เพียงหนึ่งเดียวนะคะก็คงจะมีความหมายมากนะคะในช่วงโควิด -19 อย่างนี้นะคะก็อย่างที่ทราบกันดีอยู่นะคะว่าภาวะโควิดนั้นก็กระทบไปทั่วเลยนะคะไม่เพียงแต่ประเทศไทยก็ทั่วโลกเลยสหรัฐอเมริกาเองก็อยู่ในภาวะต้องเรียกว่าภาวะวิกฤตนะคะเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยการพูดคุยของเราในวันนี้เนี่ยเราก็จะไม่ได้ครอบคลุมเฉพาะสภาวะการของตลาดสหรัฐในภาวะปกตินะคะท่านวิทยากรของเราในวันนี้ก็จะพูดคุยถึงเรื่องโควิด -19 ด้วยแล้วก็สิ่งที่ผู้ประกอบการไทยทั้งหลายเนี่ยจะต้องปรับตัวเปลี่ยนแปลงนะคะเพื่อรองรับความต้องการที่อาจจะเปลี่ยนไปของนักเดินทางจากสหรัฐแล้วก็เราจะต้องทำอย่างไรเพื่อที่เราจะมีความพร้อมเมื่อถึงวันที่เขาพร้อมจะเดินทางมาเยี่ยมเยียนประเทศไทยของเราอีกครั้งหนึ่งนะคะทำยังไงที่เราจะทำให้ชาวสหรัฐมาเยือนประเทศไทยหลักล้านคนแบบที่เราเคยได้มา 2-3 ปีที่ผ่านมาเราจะเป็นล้านคนเราจะเป็น1.5 ล้านเราจะเป็น2 ล้านได้อย่างไรวันนี้เราจะมาพูดคุยกันนะคะก่อนอื่นขออนุญาตแนะนำตัวเองนิดนึงนะคะดิฉันโสภณา สุจริตกุลนะคะเป็นผู้จัดการการตลาดของการท่องเที่ยวแห่งประเทศไทยสำนักงานลอสแอนเจลิสนะคะวันนี้ทำหน้าที่เป็นผู้ดำเนินรายการนะคะก็จะมีช่วงภาษาไทยบ้างช่วงภาษาอังกฤษบ้างนะคะในช่วงที่คุยกับท่านวิทยากรก็อาจจะต้องปรับเป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะคะหากท่านใดมีคำถามส่งมาได้เลยนะคะจะเป็นภาษาไทยภาษาอังกฤษเรา2คนคือดิฉันกับวิทยากรจะพยายามที่จะตอบคำถามให้ได้มากที่สุดในวันนี้นะคะเพื่อที่จะคลายข้อข้องใจของทุกท่านในเรื่องของการทำตลาดสหรัฐนะคะต่อไปก็คงจะต้องขออนุญาตแนะนำท่านวิทยากรในบ่ายวันนี้นะคะอันที่จริงแล้วเราคงต้องขอบคุณท่านวิทยากรมากเลยเพราะว่าตอนนี้ก็เป็นเวลาเที่ยงคืนไปแล้วนะคะของ LA เราแม้ว่าจะเป็นบ่าย 2ของที่เมืองไทยนะคะแต่ท่านวิทยากรท่านนี้เนี่ยท่านมีความผูกพันกับเมืองไทยค่อนข้างจะมากนะคะเคยมาเมืองไทยหลายครั้งมากเลยเดี๋ยวเราจะได้มีโอกาสพูดคุยกับท่านว่าท่านติดใจเมืองไทยยังไงแล้วก็ค่ำคืนนี้เนี่ยยอมมาพบเจอเราเนี่ยในกลางค่ำกลางคืนขนาดนี้เนี่ยเพราะอะไรนะคะท่านเป็นวิทยากรที่มีความรู้ความเชี่ยวชาญในตลาดเป็นการเฉพาะเลยนะคะเป็นนักวิชาการนะคะเคยสอนหนังสือมาก่อนแล้วเป็นนักวิจัยนะคะปัจจุบันเนี่ยท่านก่อนที่จะพูดถึงปัจจุบันนะคะท่านก่อตั้งบริษัทชื่อ MyRate ขึ้นมาแล้วก็กว่า30 ปีที่ผ่านมาเนี่ยนะคะท่านก็รับเป็นที่ปรึกษามากมายทั้งให้กับภาครัฐและก็ภาคเอกชนนะคะปัจจุบันนี้ MyRate ก็เป็นส่วนหนึ่งของบริษัทที่ปรึกษาที่มีชื่อเสียงระดับโลกนะคะชื่อ MMGY ล่าสุดเนี่ยท่านได้ทำการวิจัยให้กับ USTOA นะคะหรือ United States Travel Travel Tour Operator Association นะคะ USTOA ทำการวิจัยล่าสุดเมื่อสิ้นปีที่ผ่านมานะคะแล้วก็มีคำถามส่วนหนึ่งที่เกี่ยวกับประเทศไทยด้วยนะคะ research ก็เพิ่งจะ release เมื่อต้นปีที่ผ่านมานี้เองเพราะฉะนั้นวันนี้เราก็จะได้รับความรู้มากมายหลายอย่างจากท่านทีเดียวนะคะในโอกาสนี้ขออนุญาตแนะนำท่านวิทยากรประจำบ่ายวันนี้เลยนะคะคือ Mr. Alan Elliott Merchant ค่ะนะคะ Hello Alan, welcome Alan to the TAT webinar session that we will focus primarily on the US market, and all of the Thai suppliers joining us this afternoon, they really want to know more about how to market, how to do the market to this particular region, because there's so many obstacles, being really far away from each other. It's a super long haul kind of destination with time differences and cost wise, when they want to do the market, when they travel to come to, I don't know, like sales call or joining any trade events. It's so difficult for them. So I hope you will share the insights and experiences related to the US market, and then hopefully help them understand more of this market. So I guess I better give you the mic, and then I'll see you again maybe in the next 30 minutes then.
Okay, thank you so much, Sippy. Sawadika. It's a true honor for me to be here today and talking to you and sharing some of the research that we have and some of the thoughts on what's happening with COVID-19. As someone where I think Thailand is very near and dear to my heart. I've been several times, so and I can't wait until the next time I go. So with that, I think we'll jump right into the presentation, and I'll share my screen and go on. And there we go. And I think we should be live right now. Oops. Okay, is that live for everyone? I hope. So if that's the case, I'm going to start ahead and do the presentation. So I'll tell you first what the presentation will not do. We will not give you every answer to every question you have, unfortunately. And I cannot tell you when COVID-19 will end. I wish we all did know that. And I cannot make you the ultimate marketing guru, at least not in the next 30 to 40 minutes. What the presentation will do is share some important research for you. We will give you some marketing insights of how to work with the US market, and hopefully we will help you plan the way back, more importantly, the way forward from that. So as Tippy mentioned, I'm with MMGY Global. We have a motto that we inspire people to go places. Uh-oh, it's not yet shared. Okay. Let me try this again. Share. I'm hoping that works. Does that work? I'm hoping. Okay, so I'm gonna, whoops. I hope this is in sharing or not. Good? Okay. So our motto is that we inspire people to go places, and we have offices. We have 8 offices throughout the United States, and we're also in Europe and the Middle East. Our business is 100% tourism. So all our clients are travel, tourism, tourist boards, hotels, cruise lines, and everything else, as well as tour operators. We're also part of a big network called Travel Console, which has independent offices around the world with some of the leading travel marketing companies. So we have over 500 travel and tourism clients, 55 offices worldwide, and over 850 professionals. And once again, that business is 100% tourism. So we're able to get a lot of insights from a lot of different people. So now let's go into today's agenda. First, we're going to talk about the US market and how it works. Then we'll move on to travelers' interest and some very important research that Thai tourism did with USTOA, and a little bit about dealing with the new world. So my goal here is to help explain some of the trends in the United States and what's happening. Unfortunately, the first trend I really can't explain. Yes, he is our president, at least until November or December. We'll find out what happens after the election. But the sad part is the country is very divided, and we're hoping that things will start to get back together and it will truly be a United States soon. To put things in perspective, we have just under 330 million people in the United States, about the same size as Europe. So it is very complex. Almost half of Americans own passports, and that continues to rise. That's an encouraging thought on so many ways. But when you look deeper into it, you realize some state passport ownership is much stronger than others. So if someone wants for you to go to Alabama to do a roadshow, it's probably not a good idea, where places like New York and California are very strong. California is actually now the 5th largest economy in the world, and some international destinations can view California as a market in itself. So now let's talk about the distribution channels, because it's very important. Now, admittedly, I've been in the business for a long time, and it used to be very interesting and very simple. The consumer would go to the retail agent in the US, who would find the wholesaler in the United States, who would come across to Bangkok and find the inbound tour operator, and the tour operator would go to the product, go to the hotels, go to the tours, and buy it and package it all. Unfortunately, or fortunately for the consumer, but unfortunately for us, that has changed the distribution model completely. Now we have consumers coming directly to product, going to wholesalers, wholesalers going to product, and then to consumers. So it's changing, and it's changing all the time. Unfortunately, now that means instead of just dealing with one part of the distribution, we have to look at dealing with all of the distribution and seeing what's the benefits and the caution in doing that too. One of the things that our research found is that we knew the consumer would go to the retail travel agent and the inbound tour operator and the product and the wholesaler. What we didn't realize is often they are going on the same trip to all four of these different entities. So they might go and book parts of their trip with the retail travel agent. They might hear about some specific idea and it was only booked through a wholesaler. They might use their Hilton points to stay at the Hilton in Bangkok. And they might use an inbound tour operator for a puppet tour and something else because that's the connection they got. So it's become very complex. For you and the hotels and the tour operation and inbound tour operators, it's now, because of COVID-19, another time to look and say, what is the best approach? The ultimate is to get the product to the consumer. And now, because of internet and marketing, it is possible to do that directly. In some ways, that's very good because all the money goes directly from the consumer to the product. On the other hand, there's a lot of work in there. Quite often, the inbound tour operator does so much to help this process, especially with converting money, using multiple products, coordinating everything on the ground too. So as a product, you have to evaluate that. Do you want to deal directly with the consumer? And especially with the legal part and the financial part. This is probably the most common now. Tour operators are still working through travel agents, and we see that happening more. But it also means the percentage that you receive as a product is not as much, but for the most part, we feel that is worth it in the long run. And of course, the traditional one with the travel advisor. We do see after COVID-19, the travel advisor being more and more important for international travelers. Now let's take a look at the travel advisors, the travel agents, and what's happening. Right now, there's about 100,000 US travel advisors around the country. And they represented, at least from last year, about $100 billion in sales. Much of it corporate, but a lot of leisure, long-haul travel. The interesting part here is how much the consortiums play in this field. Right now, especially for long-haul destinations, there's probably only around 5 important consortiums. And 8 out of 10 travel agencies belong to these consortia. So the marketing is not necessarily on the individual travel agency level, it's with the consortia. And the Thai tourist office has done a very, very good job in working with Virtuoso and Signature and travel leaders. So instead of you working with them, it's more important that you work through the tourist office and in conjunction with the tourist office to achieve this, because this is the best way to reach travel agents. The other thing that's changed is 40,000 travel agents are now home-based, and they are considered independent contractors. So they are no longer employees of the travel agency. They are freelance people. They are working from home, and they did last year and the year before. And so you cannot come here and do sales calls to travel agencies because there's not enough people there. Everyone's working at home. And we see a trend even with the tour operators that that's happening too. So training becomes more marketing and webinars and other activities, not necessarily face-to-face sales calls. And now with digital activities, agents are looking forward to digital activities and get more out of digital activities. Keep in mind that this is a very big country and it's hard to get around, so it's much easier to reach them digitally and on a virtual thing. We believe that in the future, the vast majority of advisors will be home-based and independent contractors, that this will be a shift we see in the next few years, if not sooner, because of the way that people can access everything virtually. Unlike, say, in the UK or other markets where things are done face-to-face, in the United States, 8 out of 10 transactions with travel advisors are done by phone or internet. So it doesn't matter where the travel advisor is anymore, and for the most part, that means they will be at home. Now let's take a look at what's the trend. And now a lot of this information came out of our joint research with USTOA and MMGY. And now I'm going to give you some of the survey highlights, but it's important to know we didn't interview everybody in the United States or across the board. We were very specific. The average household income in the United States is about $60,000. We started out with people making over $100,000. So a very high-end market. They all were current passport holders, and they had traveled outside of North America and expected to travel outside of North America again. So it was a very high-end market. Now, usually when you do research, it confirms some of your thinking, but it also challenges it too. So when we asked about destinations, no big surprise, Europe always stays strong of where they'd visited in the last 2 years. But Asia was very strong with 30%. So keeping in mind this is the high-end market, that's a very strong number. When we asked where they wanted to visit in the next 3 years, 6 out of 10 wanted to go to Asia. Once again, a very strong number and something we've seen great growth over the last 10 years. Of the people who wanted to go to Asia, 43% wanted to go to Thailand. And you should be so proud of this number because of the interest in Thailand, especially, which we'll talk about, because of the fact that Thailand does not have a direct flight from the United States, it is very strong. And if you look at every one of those, almost every one of those other countries, Japan, Singapore, China, Taiwan, South Korea, India, they all have direct flights to the United States, but yet Taiwan does very, very well for not having direct flights. Now, what are some of the motivators? We found something interesting this time. These highly educated and well-off people wanted to experience different cultures. They wanted more exploration and adventure. They wanted new cuisines. They wanted to learn about food, and they wanted to be educated. As you see, it wasn't so much relaxation laying around the beaches. They want more active things where they learn. And when we looked at it, we realized that the top 4 categories all represented learning. They're experiencing different cultures, they're learning about the culture. When they're doing adventure, they're learning more about themselves. The food is really, once again, a learning, and in general, they want to learn more. And so that's important to put into your product, is how will these people be better when they leave, not just relaxed. This is what I thought was a very important, interesting attribute, which is 6 out of 10 believe the destination says a lot about who they are. So that means it's not what I'm going to do. It means does Thailand's personality match my personality? So it's not just about things, it's about feelings and how they feel when they go to the destination. And also, because of social media, when they post that they've gone to Thailand, are they proud of the fact that they're going to Thailand? And this becomes an important part in marketing too. Now, we mentioned traditional travel agents and we gave you some numbers, but this is from the consumer side. And what we're seeing is a big interest. This is over a 10% increase in people wanting to use travel agents. So this is very strong, and it's very important when it comes to long-haul international travel, especially when English is not the first language there. Even more interesting is we found out the millennials wanted to use travel agents. They are what we call, remember, these people have a lot of money, they are money rich but time poor. So they want someone with an expertise in a destination that can tell them more than just the basics. Now, we mentioned flights before too. Now, 7 out of 10 said they have a few airlines that they like to fly with. But the interesting part was they're not necessarily American airlines. They are interested in going to international airlines, and 3 out of 10 had no preference. They were looking for the best airline and the best price. So that has been a change that we see that continues, that they are open to flying different airlines. And something very important for Thailand is when we ask the willingness to fly to an international destination with multiple connections, the percentage who said they were somewhat willing or extremely willing was almost 9 out of 10 were willing to take one connection. That's a great opportunity for Thailand. And we all know of the problems with Thai Airways right now. But the good news is it's okay for people to go and take one connection to go to Thailand. And even half were willing to take 2 connections. So that's very strong and important. Now, this, of course, was a question we asked in November about cruising. But this high-end market was much more interested in river cruising than big ship cruising. So there still is an interest, but they want the smaller, more intimate setting for that. When it comes to food, which is so important for the American traveler, it's one reason that I like to go to Thailand so much too. We saw something very interesting. If you see the #1 answer in culinary options, it was authentic food eaten by local and brand new dining experiences, and then street food and hard to find dishes. So the interesting thing is they want locals, they want something that's an experience, not just the food. They're very interested in the street food, and of course the markets of Thailand are some of the best. And the interesting part is when it comes to 5-star Michelin restaurants, that wasn't that important to them. There's a feeling that I can go to 5-star restaurants anywhere. If I'm in Thailand, I want to experience Thai food and I want to experience it by the locals. And the more I can have a local dining experience, the better. Now, Thailand participated in our research, and that allowed them to ask some specific questions. So as a reminder, the household income was over $100,000, all current passport holders who traveled outside of North America. Plus, we were able to talk to the people who were interested in going to Thailand in the next 3 years. So this, we compared those who had visited and past visitation too. So 43% are interested in visiting Thailand in the next 3 years. That's a great number, better than most destinations, quite frankly. And 1 out of 3 have visited Thailand. So that's strong too. When we look at where the big growth will come, it's once again the wealthy millennials. They want to go. A lot have been. That doesn't mean that the boomers and the Gen Xers don't want to go. They're all strong numbers, but the younger market is very interested in Thailand, and that's great for the future. We asked some specific questions for Thailand. This, I think, opened our eyes a little bit. Over half thought the flight to Thailand was very expensive. And this is something we're working with the Thailand Tourist Office as we see what flights will cost in the future to get the point across that is very inexpensive to fly to Thailand. Up until last year, you could buy flights for under $600 to go to Thailand. And we need to do a better job of educating people about that. And as long as the airfare stays that way, it'll be a good argument for us. The only hard part will be that a lot of other destinations will be offering cheap flights. Once again, the main reasons were the culture and the food, and those were the strongest, especially those who had visited Thailand. One thing that's really good, especially now, is people wanted to do off the beaten path cultural destinations and natural destinations. And we're thinking after COVID, they will not want the cities as much as they want some of the areas outside the cities. We asked what specific places, and no big surprise, but Bangkok and Phuket and Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai were of interest. And biggest part is that that's what people know about Thailand. But you're seeing 1 out of 10 looking at specific different destinations, either beach destinations or other cultural destinations. So it takes a while to educate people on these different areas, but it's slow process, and the more the product becomes interesting, the more interest there is. Also, we see that the people who went to Thailand see Thailand as a budget-friendly destination with very strong numbers. 8 out of 10 thought it was budget-friendly. 8 out of 10 thought it was great for solo, and 7 out of 10 thought of it as great as a wellness destination. Those are very strong numbers. The safe number is so important right now. and we'll talk a little bit more about keeping it like that. Of course, there are some negatives, but if you look that people think the flight's too expensive, we can overcome, language we can overcome, and things like that. But all these numbers overall compared to other destinations are very low barriers to traveling to Thailand. Now, if we look at when they want to visit, it's about the same, but look at the average spend for the people going on vacations in the last 10 months. These people, this high-end market, was spending over $11,000 or $12,000, and that will continue. So that's a strong point and a strong indicator. What are the motivators? Exploration and adventure. 9 out of 10 people want that from Thailand, a bigger number. We see almost a 15% increase in visiting off-the-path destinations. Once again, this will be very important in a post-COVID-19 world. And again, the same numbers, that there's an increase in those who are visiting Thailand with the cultural adventure and the learning process. So that's another big motivator for them. They like to visit multiple destinations, especially when you think that they're going to take 2 stops to get to the place. Those that are interested want to see a lot, and once again, want to be educated. Here we see they want to see all the things the destination has to offer, and they want to immerse themselves in the culture. And quite frankly, from my trips, I know that's so easy to do. So we have an advantage with Thailand. Now, what other international vacation activities? Adventure travel, as I mentioned, is very strong. Now, what we call adventure travel is not necessarily hard hiking or anything like that. It's just sometimes getting away from the city and doing something different. The historical and cultural sites are very important. And as we know, the entire country has more than enough to offer to the American market. But these are the main things that the people are looking for. If you notice, it's not so much luxury, it's more the experience. And once again, experiencing new cuisines. And it's not just the food, it's how they enjoy the food. If it's in a market, if it's in a cooking class, if it's in a food tour, those are the experiences. It's not the food, it's more the experience and how they ate it, how they learned about it, hopefully how they can cook it too. And they want the authentic. They don't want the big commercial restaurants. They don't necessarily want the hotel restaurants. They want to go out and experience something that the locals experience. 9 out of 10 people talked about that for those who are interested in visiting Thailand. That's a very strong number. Now for the planning, and admittedly, this might change a little bit, but we think it might even get a little longer out. But 3 to 6 months ahead is planning, but booking is even shorter. So less than 3 months ahead, 1 out of 4 people is booking. 3 to 6 months ahead. And depending on what happens with COVID-19, we think those windows will get even smaller and people will book with even shorter notice, depending on what happens in that situation. How are they finding out about destinations? Well, they're looking at much more media and sources than they ever did before. And you can see these are a list of all the ones that are going through. And once again, the numbers of those who are interested in Thailand are much higher than the people who are not. So we know we have to be in all those markets. And I know this is a lot of information. We will be sending it all to you, so not to worry too much. And what are specific sites? TripAdvisor is still very, very big. People look at that for ideas and they want to know opinions too. So it's very strong. And then interestingly, they look at Expedia and then hotels and getting a feel for that too. The other one that jumps out is YouTube. So 1 out of 3 people are looking at YouTube for video. So it's another great way to market. It's very inexpensive for you to market and put as much on YouTube as you possibly can and some of the other social media that's out there. Also, they're doing a lot of search when they're in the destination. So if you're a smaller tour operator or have a specific tour, it's important to get on TripAdvisor and Yelp and have all the people who participated in your tour do the same. When it comes to organized tours, there is a lot of interest and it continues. And we might see even more because of COVID. Some of the tour operators we're talking to are saying that people are delaying their trips for a year, but they're going to the same destination. And interestingly, the millennial interest in guided vacations is increasing too. The main reason is they see several things on one vacation and they don't have to plan it. They're allowing somebody else to plan for them. And this is especially true when English is a second language or a third language. And just to wrap up this part, the demographics of the people we talk to, it's a little more women than men, but you can see the household income and how big it is for this. So this is the average age is 46. So we have a relatively young, very wealthy audience who has a strong interest in going to Thailand. Interestingly here, if you look, I think it's never married or divorced and separated, you still got 20% of people who are on their own who are looking too. And a strong Asian interest for those who are interested in going to Thailand. And once again, you see the 35% of college educated. This is higher than the 25% across the country. And you see a strong interest in New York, New Jersey, the South. Florida is very strong for Thailand. And then, of course, the West Coast. 2 out of 10 people who are interested live in the West Coast. This will continue to be strong, although some of the flights out of the East Coast will be strong too. Once again, remember that California is the 5th largest economy in the world. It's a very strong market. They're comfortable with Thai food, with Thai cultures. They have an idea, and there are a lot of Thais who live here. So that certainly helps California be in a very strong market for the future. Now, the third part of this presentation is about COVID-19. And I wish I had a crystal ball that could tell you exactly what will happen, when it will end, and when the Americans will start traveling again. I wish I could, but I can't. But I will try to give you some insights into this. First of all, when we say recovery, we think you should not say recovery. Recovery in English means you're going back to the way it was, and we don't think that's going to happen. It's going to go into a new world. Many of you have heard about Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution, and the people who and the companies who adapt to change are those who will succeed. The ones who say, let's go back to the way it was, will not be able to succeed. You have to kind of start thinking in a different way. Before tourism comes back, travel has to come back first. And the biggest hindrance on travel is some of the lockdowns. As you know, certain countries are not letting people in. So we cannot predict that people will coming back if the country will not let them in. So first, we have to get people comfortable in going to airplanes and airports. Secondly, we have to get the destinations to open, and then we'll start to get tourism. So that's the second stage. And I want to be realistic and say, don't expect people to come back quickly until they're comfortable with those first two elements and the lockdowns are over. The other part is when it comes to flights. Right now, the airlines are not flying. I just talked to someone from Lufthansa Airlines who said only 3% of their fleet is flying. So it's important to realize too, it's not just, say, Americans coming to Thailand through Taiwan or China or Japan. It's how many Japanese or Chinese or Taiwanese are flying to America. So for an airline to actually operate effectively, they need people going both ways, not just one way. So in other words, even if the US came back tomorrow, they would need people from other places wanting to come to the United States. And some of our global research says there's not a big interest in coming to the United States now, especially places like New York. So it'll take a while for there to be enough air traffic to make it worthwhile to get the travel and the cost down. And then realistically, we'll start to see tourism from that side. So I understand there's a fair amount of hotels on this call. So one of the questions is, what should hotels do first? Well, we have a strong opinion there. First of all, and this is probably for everyone, we need what we consider optics and safety. First, the safety. It's important that hotels and tours coaches, everything, apply international safety standards. It's not enough to say we have Thai standards or we have Chinese standards or Australian standards. It'll be important to say we have reached international safety standards as the first thing to put people, to make them comfortable in traveling to the destination. The next is what we call optics and what people see. And examples of that are metal detectors, toilet seat seals, thermometers. When you think about it, after 9/11, we needed to see the metal detectors to know the flight was safe. Even in the least expensive hotel, we see that little seal around the toilet seat and somehow we think it's safe. And the same thing with taking temperature. We need to see those things. It's not enough to talk about them. The more you can show, the more you clean, the more coach drivers are cleaning the coaches, the more people will be interested in traveling. Now, the next thing that we're going to recommend to you might be a little controversial and might be a little different, and it certainly is new. But in this new normal, this new era, we think it's important. So let's imagine, for example, you have a hotel pre-COVID and you charge $200 a night at the hotel. Okay, that's great. What happens is people say, we need to discount our product for people to come back, even for domestic tourism. And what do? They put out a price of $69 a night for that same $200 hotel because they want to get things going. And we say, please, please, please do not do that for several reasons. One reason, it takes a long time for you to get those prices back up because people will say, oh, that hotel was only $69. How come it's so much now? First of all. Second of all, it's harder for the tour operators and everyone else to sell because of that same reason, especially if they've sold something for last year and then the consumer sees the prices lower this year, they want their money back. What we advocate is something different. Add value. Now, one of the things that the hotels in Thailand do, which is so important, is free breakfast. That's a very important thing, and you need to talk about that as much as you can. But then go one step further and do 5 nights for the price of 2. Now, you might say, wow, that's a big savings, and it is. But remember, the people who are going to travel, there won't be as many people who travel. So the longer you can let them stay, the better. The longer length of stay, the better for everybody, the hotel and everybody else involved. And just for the sake of example, if you do 5 nights at $200 a night, so you're only doing 2 nights at $200, that's $400. If you do those same 5 nights at $69, that's only $345. So just for starters, you're doing better offering the 5 nights and maintaining that $200 price hold or whatever your pricing happens to be. Now I'm going to push you one step further and say do 5 nights for 2, the cost of 2, plus free activities. And what do I mean by free activities? I'd love for you to get involved with your community and offer consumers, travelers, something more. Cooking class, the night tuk-tuk tour, which I love in Bangkok, walking tours with all the temples, puppet shows, boat rides. It's so important that the consumer sees there's 5 days of activities to do. If all you're doing is selling the hotel room, they'll come for 2 to 3 nights and then they'll go somewhere else. If you can put this package together for that same $200 a night and then share some of your money with your local community, this is successful. This is, to me, also what Thailand is all about, that sense of community, that sense of sharing. And the more you can do for all the product in the area, if it's Chiang Mai, if it's Bangkok, if it's Phuket, the more people will want to come to Bangkok and stay. Remember, with limited people, you need a longer length of stay. This is what I will call the new sharing economy, because everybody will benefit together and everybody will win together. Trying to do this on your own will not work. So If I was in a room with all of you right now, I'd ask you to start talking to your neighbors and seeing how well you can do. The next bit of advice we'd like to give is to be flexible. People will change, things are going to change, and you need to be flexible in your approach. For example, many of the big tour operators here are saying to their consumers, well, you booked with us for a $5,000 package. Instead of us refunding your money, if you do that same booking for next year, we'll give you a credit of $5,500. So we'll give you more just to make sure you stay with us and we don't have to refund your money. The cruise lines are giving up to 125% for those who maintain their booking for the next year. So it's important you work with the inbound tour operators, the overseas tour operators, and see what you can do to work with them. How should you talk to your clients? Well, you have to stay in touch. And this is for B2B and B2C. If you're on B2B, make sure you're talking to your clients. Make sure you're talking to the people who could be your clients. Make sure you're being creative with your approach. If you have consumers' names and numbers, talk to them constantly. Tell them what's going on. Don't tell them to book, tell them what's happening. Remember, it costs 6 times more money to get a new client than to keep an existing one. So it's so important that you keep with your existing clients. The first place to look is past travelers. They know Thailand, they love Thailand. All the research indicates that. It's a comfortable place, it's a safe place. So reaching out to them now and starting to say, for 2021, it's probably time for you to come back to Thailand is a perfect approach to show them some of the things they're missing in Thailand now to help their memory is a perfect approach. Stay social. There's a reason it's called social media, and that means you're not selling, you're being friendly, you're being social, you're being their friend. This is important, and it's not only important in consumers, but it's important in trade. If you're trying to talk to tour operators, be social with them. If you're trying to get into your inbound tour operators, be social with them. Show your creativity, show what you're doing, show what's new and exciting, show how you're doing the food cooking classes, but you're taking people to local markets and they're cooking in your home. Show the creativity that the Thai people have. And through that, it's social media, it's storytelling, and it's using your database. So in the social media, there's so many opportunities right now, and you can use this for both consumers and trade once again, because most of the travel agents are still looking at the social media and not just B2B platforms. There's exciting things you can do. We mentioned YouTube. There's a new great site called stellar.com that allows anybody to post stories, and it goes straight to consumers, and it's absolutely free. Great opportunity. And of course, use Facebook and everything else that you can. And remember, it's about storytelling. It's not about your sale. It's not about your 5 nights for $200 a night, even though that's important. It's telling the stories of what you're doing, the stories of the Thai people. The main reason people go to Thailand is the culture. So the more you can share about the culture, the better. This is not what you want to share. Even if you're in Bangkok, it's not going to happen. This is more what you want to share in this COVID time. People will want to see big open spaces. We've all been in our homes for so long. We want to see that wide open, big sky, and we want to have the ability to do that. And remember, if you sell that, you will also sell this too. They might spend 4 nights in Bangkok and 6 nights in Phuket or 8 nights in Phuket. Everyone will benefit. But the idea is to keep an open mind and talk about what's happening outside of the major cities too, and how that feeling of freedom and peacefulness is still in Thailand. Use your database. Most of you have it on your computer and you haven't used it. I have to say, I don't know how many hotels I stay at, and they get all my data, but they don't contact me. This is the time to contact anybody who's ever stayed with you or worked with you. This is the time to contact the travel agents, the reservation agents, and everyone else, and try to build a relationship too. Our recent survey, global survey, asked how willing would you be to use a new supplier, a new hotel moving forward? And over 50% said they are open to using different people. So that gives you a great opportunity. Who will be the first travelers back to Thailand? First, repeat travelers. As I mentioned, these are the people who know the destination, who love the destination. They know the ease of it. They know the safety of it. So that's one of the reasons we say use your database. They will be the first ones to come to Thailand. Those repeat travelers hopefully will bring others with them. And that's one way for you to generate more revenue by reaching out to these people. It's what we consider the intrepid travelers. The person who's not afraid to go and experience something new. Those will be the next group of people who are saying, this is an opportunity, it's not so crowded, let's go and try something different. We also think there'll be two types of these intrepid travelers. There will be an upscale traveler who's sophisticated and wants to go back to Thailand because they understand what's there, and they're also understanding that it's a great opportunity to travel. And there's also the adventurous ones. So we go from this extreme of maybe 5-star down to 2 to 3-star. That said, the American market is still so strong, it'll probably still spend more money than most low-end markets. I mean, please keep in mind that Americans visiting Thailand is a quality market. The average length of stay is unbelievable at 13 to 14 nights. And you do all this with a non-direct flight. I think it's so important to understand that there's over 1 million Americans who come to Thailand. That's a great, great number. When will they return? If I know when the lockdown is over, I can tell you when they'll return. But I will say this, realistically, between this year and the next couple of years, 2020, maybe the last couple months of 2020, maybe Christmas. In 2021, we'll certainly see an increase. It might not be back to the numbers it was, but I think it'll be a high-end market and the money will be there. And then in 2022, I think the numbers and the dollars will be back to where they were before. So a little bit of a time, but I think it'll well be worth it. And I'll just leave you with a quote of one of a great American president, Abraham Lincoln, who said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So with that, I'm hoping that instead the world starts giving up shaking hands and it takes the lead from Thailand as to how we move forward and greet each other. And with that, I say thank you.
Thank you very much, Al. And it's really a true insight. I'm pretty sure not only for the Thai suppliers, for myself and for a TAT team as well. Thanks for your time. Before we move to the Q&A session, let me take a few minutes to talk a little bit to the Thai suppliers about the activities that we're going to do in North America. ท่านผู้ประกอบการค้าก็คงจะได้รับความรู้ไปเยอะแยะเลยนะคะมากมายเลยจากคุณแอลเลนนะคะก็หลายอย่างเลยที่เราจะเตรียมตัวเพื่อที่จะเราเห็นลูกศรแล้วนะคะขึ้นไปสู่ปี21-22นะคะ22เราคงจะคว้ามาได้สัก1.5 ล้าน2 ล้านนั้นก็ช่วยกันนะคะแล้วก็ททท.เองนะคะไม่ว่าจะเป็นสำนักงานใหญ่ทางภูมิภาคอเมริกากองตลาดอเมริกาหรือว่าททท.ในพื้นที่สหรัฐนะคะเราก็ทำงานอย่างเต็มที่นะคะก็ขออนุญาตประชาสัมพันธ์กิจกรรมที่ท่านผู้ประกอบการสามารถร่วมกับเราได้ในช่วงนี้นะคะเราก็มีแคมเปญที่เรียกว่าอยู่ 2-3 อันนะคะอันแรกเลยก็อาจจะเหมาะกับผู้ประกอบการที่เป็นโรงแรมเป็นที่พักนะคะแคมเปญชื่อว่า Buy Now Stay Later นะคะก็คืออย่างที่คุณอัลพูดไปนะคะก็คือจ่ายวันนี้เอาไปเที่ยวมาพักวันข้างหน้าแล้วก็มี value added อะไรก็ว่ากันไปนะคะอันนี้เรากำลังรับสมัครผู้ที่ประสงค์จะเข้าร่วมโครงการกับเราอยู่นะคะ Buy Now Stay Later นะคะแล้วเราก็กำลังจะมี Buy Now Travel Later ด้วยกันนะคะก็ติดตามข่าวสารกันต่อไปอีกกิจกรรมนึงที่อยากจะขอประชาสัมพันธ์คุณเอาได้พูดไปว่ากิจกรรมดิจิทัลเนี่ยสำคัญมากกิจกรรม virtual สำคัญมากสำหรับตลาดสหรัฐนะคะเนื่องจากพื้นที่ใหญ่แล้วก็อยู่ไกลกันมากกับประเทศไทยนั้นมันหลายอย่างมากเลยที่ทำให้เราเชื่อมโยงกับเขายากลำบาก กิจกรรม virtual นี่แหละค่ะอย่างที่เราทำกันในวันนี้หรือว่า virtual expo virtual trade ต่างๆเนี่ยเป็นเรื่องที่สำคัญแล้วก็สำนักงานสหรัฐอเมริกาเองเนี่ยก็กำลังจะ host virtual expo นะคะในเดือนกรกฎาคมนี้ก็ติดตามข่าวสารแล้วก็ลงทะเบียนผู้ประกอบการที่จะร่วมโครงการ virtual expo นะคะเราทำมาแล้ว2 ปีปีนี้จะเป็นปีที่3นะคะก็หวังว่าจะได้มีโอกาสพบทุกท่านในโลกเสมือนจริงอีกครั้งหนึ่งนะคะไปสู่คำถามเลยค่ะเรามีเวลาค่อนข้างจะน้อยนิดนะคะคำถามแรกเลยค่ะ let's go to the first question but before we go to the questions from the audience Al can you share briefly why you really like Thailand
That's easy. I think there's two reasons. One is I think whenever I have to find my peace with myself, Thailand's the first place to go. And as you know, Tippy, I travel about 200 days a year all over the world. And I always think that in certain destinations, there's friendly service and our friendly staff, like in Australia. They're very friendly, but they're very slow and she'll be right, mate, all that stuff.
I see.
Then there's places where there's good service, like the United States, but they also have their hand out for a tip.
Wow.
And then there's Thailand, which has hospitality. So I believe Thailand has built its reputation because it's sincere with the hospitality, and that warmth makes me feel warm and at peace with myself. So as much as the country is beautiful and I love Bangkok and I love Phuket and everywhere else place in Chiang Mai, it's the people that bring me back every time and the warmth of the people.
Wow, that's a really great compliment. Thank you so much, Al. But you know what? I'm pretty sure, and I feel that when you say Thailand, a personality match personality of the travelers, but Thailand personalities really match your personalities, I guess.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. Well, it brings out the best of my personality.
Yeah, whatsoever. So the first questions from the audience. Can you share your thoughts on strength of Thailand and perhaps the weakness as well?
That's a good question. I mean, the strength, I think, is, of course, the people. I think the strength is also the strength of the culture and the dedication to the culture. It's very strong. One of the best things is that the culture is through everything. In other words, it's not you go someplace and then go to a cultural experience. The cultural experience is everything you do. If it is the tuk-tuk tour, if it is the night markets, if it is the cooking schools, that culture comes all the way through. And I think people want that. They want to learn about it. They want to experience it. I think one of the best things is now I think people think of Thailand as very safe. And the best part is you don't have to tell people it's safe. They know it. One of the worst things destinations do is say, we're safe. And then people start to think about it. You don't have to do that with Thailand. I think also its value for money is incredibly good. I think that especially the people who've gone, and I think it's important to say its value for money, not that it's an inexpensive destination, because you don't want that association. And I think Thailand over the last few years, I think the tourist office has done a great job of not saying we're inexpensive. It's saying we're great value for our money. I think weaknesses, I don't even think it's the lack of direct flight. I don't think that has that much influence on it. I think I wish Thailand tourism had more money to spend because it's very competitive. It's not that you're spending it well, but there's so many other destinations who are spending so much money in this market that it's very hard to compete. And so that's I wish we had more money and people could talk a bit more about that.
Yes, and I guess also by adding more values to many of the Thai products and services could done easily. Like you mentioned about breakfast, like nobody knows about, how great, options about Thai breakfast, things like that. I mean, at the hotel. So things like that could be added easily. And also, of course, Thai Tourism Board will also help the Thai suppliers to add those values into the.
I mean, it's a great point to be in that. In Europe, breakfast in a big hotel is $35 per person.
Right, right.
And so the fact that it's included, and now we might have to change buffet to something else because of COVID-19, but I think there's enough creativity that we can solve that problem.
Okay, thank you. And then let's go to the, I think we still have time for the second and maybe the third questions. Okay, as a small business in Thailand, do we have any opportunities for the US market?
Yes, great question. I don't know what business you have, but I can say this. There's a few things. First, of course, look through the system, look at the inbound tour operators, look at your competition. What are you doing different from them? And then say, is this something that the US traveler wants? So a lot of times people come up with an idea and say, nobody's doing that. Often there's a good reason no one's doing that. There's not the interest from the US market. So you have to say, not how am I different, but what am I doing that that market wants? And I hate to say it this way, but sometimes when people say, oh, we're much more personal, everybody says that. So you have to think of how you're genuinely different. The other is to find if your product has a specific niche that people want in the US that you can even reach directly. If you're a scuba diving operator, what can you do as a scuba diving operator and talk to scuba diving groups? If you're food, if you're culinary, what are you doing differently than anyone else is doing? That might be that one thing that makes something different. And as I said in the example, work with the hotels, work with the partners, put together trips, put together tours, add things up that people are so excited about. Maybe it is a tuk-tuk tour that goes to the cooking school that gets topped off by puppets in the evening. It's a great opportunity right now to be very creative and to see what's going on. The last time I was in Thailand, the hotel offered a chocolate making class, and it was great fun. So that and there was a little Thai twist to it with a little Thai spice. I mean, it was fantastic. So those types of creativity is good. It's really strong.
Yeah, I guess we all have to be more creative, and then we have to reimagine how we would reach out to the audience, right? So there's always opportunity, no matter how big or small you are, right? So
yeah, and I think it's, you know, understand that everyone else in the distribution channel is earning something for you, and I, especially for people starting out, I don't want them to say, oh, well, they're taking 30%. I'd rather have them say, oh, they're giving me 70%.
right.
It's a partnership. And the more you can work with the community, the better.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really good point. So let's go. Perhaps we have, just for one last question then. What is the future of the US market for short and medium and long term?
As I said, I think the short term for long haul will take a while to come back. I think probably Christmas will be the first time. The first traveling that the US will do will be families. It will be local. It will be domestic travel, like most markets. Then the intrepid travelers will start coming back, the short-term market. The long-term, I think, is very strong because, I mean, as we've discussed, the fact that 1 million people a year go to Thailand is a very, very strong thing. And I think after COVID, more people will want to go back to places where they were comfortable before they experience someone new. So that's why I keep saying, go to past passengers, go to people who've been to Thailand. Those are the ones who will come back first, and hopefully they'll bring their friends with them. And you can just maybe even be creative on the offers that it's 2 hotel rooms for the price of 1 for 5 days. And so they can bring families, they can bring other friends, and they can show off Thailand to everyone they know.
Okay. Thank you so much, Al.
Thank you.
appreciate your time, your effort in joining us this afternoon or this tonight. Okay, and then we learn a lot from you, and then we hope that we will have a chance to meet you again somewhere somehow, and especially in Thailand. Okay.
I'd love that very much. Sawadika. Thank you so much.
ขอบพระคุณทุกท่านที่ร่วมกับเราในวันนี้เลยนะคะก็จะขออนุญาตใช้ช่วงเวลาสุดท้ายนี้ประชาสัมพันธ์กิจกรรมเพิ่มเติมในโอกาสต่อไปนะคะเซสชั่นต่อไปก็จะเป็นวันพรุ่งนี้นะคะเป็นเรื่องของตลาดเวียดนามนะคะ 10 นาฬิกาวันพรุ่งนี้นะคะสำหรับวันนี้นะคะกิจกรรมที่เราพูดคุยกันทั้งหมดก็บันทึกเทปไว้แล้วก็ท่านสามารถโหลดดูย้อนหลังได้นะคะแล้วก็presentation ของคุณแอลเองเนี่ยก็จะอัปโหลดไว้ให้นะคะดังนั้นก็คือท่านสามารถย้อนกลับไปดูได้มีคำถามอะไรติดต่อเรามาได้ตลอดค่ะเรายินดีร่วมกันนะคะที่จะเจาะตลาดสหรัฐแล้วก็ทำทุกอย่างที่จะทำให้นักท่องเที่ยวจากประเทศอเมริกานั้นได้กลับมาเที่ยวแล้วก็มาชื่นชมแล้วก็มารื่นรมมีความสุขกันกับการเดินทางในประเทศไทยอีกครั้งหนึ่งนะคะวันนี้ขอบพระคุณทุกท่านอีกครั้งนะคะก็แบบคนที่อยู่อเมริกานะคะจะต้องบอกว่า stay safe and healthy นะคะขอบพระคุณมากค่ะสวัสดีค่ะ